It was around 9 p.m. EST on October 26, 2019. The YouTuber Catechris uploaded a video on the Medieval PS4 remake. I listened to it while editing and thought the game sounded neat, but didn't finish the video. Fast forward to November 11th, I was wandering around my nearest Best Buy, and after seeing several copies of Sonic Forces and a single copy of Persona 5 in a $10 bargain bin, I walked over to the PS4 display. I noticed a demo for the Medieval remake. I also noticed the skeleton running around had a head like that in Catechris' thumbnail. Since I had a 3-hour ride home, 2 of which I was driving, I figured for that hour that I didn't drive, I'd rewatch the video, actually watching it this time. I wound up driving the whole time and forgot about the video. The next event was in mid-January 2020. I was binging YouTube late at night, and that Cat Icarus video popped up next to a few Pokemon videos. I watched it and realized the game looked awesome, so I had to have it. I downloaded the demo the same night. Finally, it's Easter 2020. My family gets one gift for each member of the family, or split one big gift. My parents bought me the Medieval remake. I was ecstatic. I moved my PS4 downstairs and played it most of the night. That, Pokies and Gentlemons, was the long and weird journey that brought me to this game. I tell you this because I think that this game is absolutely incredible, and it single-handedly delayed my top 10 game list. Speaking of, I need to change my score for my first 2 reviews. Starting with Scarlink, I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. Well, my friend revisiting the game, and yeah, I need to bring that down to an 8. Novelty is a jerk. Keep it brief, the game didn't keep the hype going, and it got really boring. And now it's just collecting dust. You're going to see my top 10 games list soon, but not yet. Medieval is a linear hack-and-slash game that has a distinct aesthetic. The game is gorgeous, and that's honestly not due to the PS4's horsepower. Both the PS1 original and the new PS4 remake have a strong art direction and design. The game is all about a slight horror aesthetic. For example, this Scarecrow in one of the early levels. This thing isn't scary to people like me at first glance, because I'm not a child, but the detail on this thing is amazing, and the amount of power these damn things have is terrifying. Another, better example is the Pumpkin Serpent. This is your second mandatory boss, which I'll get into that later. I know that there's more before that, but I'll get into why I say that. It's your second mandatory boss, and it's disgusting. I mean, just look at it. I hate it, and that's why I like it. The details are what sells the presentation. In music, level, and character design. The music that goes along with each level fits in the scenario and really sells the area. There's also this ringing effect that goes over the music after dimming that it occurs when you get on low health. The music itself is an orchestral mix with a lot of choir in it, and it fits the medieval aesthetic. Not medieval aesthetic. Plus, medieval can feel extremely claustrophobic at times, and it can lead to tense moments, like this point in the second level. The camera is fixed and isn't great, and the room is full of small enemies and big enemies, and they're in cages. But when you let them out, they attack, and the camera makes it hard to see, which can be seen as a bad thing in a lot of areas, but here, you can see just enough to know what you're doing, but it can feel very claustrophobic. There are several moments like this, including but not limited to the ant caves and the pumpkin patch. All this culminates into a style akin to a horror game mixed with hack and slash. The remake adds stuff that makes the world a little bit more goofy, which I don't mind. I honestly prefer the contrast of styles, as nothing really feels out of place. My only complaint is the frame rate. It's inconsistent at times, and it can be kind of distracting. Normally I don't care, but I noticed it a few times and I figured I'd mention it. Keep in mind, I am playing on a PS4 Slim, so that probably has something to do with it. I'm much better at talking about gameplay, so it's a good thing that Medieval's gameplay is some of my favorite out of any game ever. Medieval is a mix of hack and slash gameplay and more platformer-like gameplay. There are 2 primary attack buttons. Square is your light attack button. When using this button, you can swing your sword rapidly. This is good for things like the Enchanted Sword, but less good for the hammer. Some ranged weapons also have different firing modes or patterns with this button in comparison. Throwing daggers are a good example. Circle button is your heavy attack button. This button is used to charge weapons for more damage, but in bursts. Swords can be charged so you can do more damage and use your torso to spin around. Some ranged weapons can be charged in a similar way. Clubs are a bit different, and that's because the strong attack button extends the club so you can light things on fire. The hammer, however, does not do this. The last 2 face buttons are triangle and X. The X button is the jump button, pretty self-explanatory, but the triangle button toggles between your primary and secondary weapon, which is a new feature of the remake, and a great one at that. The options button pauses the game, and the big giant button in the center opens your inventory. I don't know what to call that. Allowing you to change your primary and secondary weapons or use quest items. The D-pad acts like it did in the original, allowing you to walk. In the original game, since control sticks were not, the norm, you had to double tap the D-pad to run. However, now the left stick allows you to run, and you can no longer double tap to run. The L1 button switches targets when you're using the ranged weapons. Your target is shown by like a pixie thing that hovers around your target. R1 is your shield move, which is key to some abilities you gain later. The last thing that Sir Dan can do right from the get-go is a Strafe Mode. The camera is a bit too close for my liking, but only for melee. For ranged weapons, it's great. All you gotta do is tap the left back trigger, but it is restricted sometimes. The main gameplay of Medievil consists of running through mostly linear levels. In these levels, you defeat enemies, you go on platforms, and solve basic puzzles. Your hearth ball is set up with 300 individual points. You can extend the amount of points by collecting life bottles. Those just can refill those 300 points when you run out. There are a few hidden throughout the stages, but the bulk of them are in the Hall of Heroes. The Hall of Heroes is
where the bravest warriors from history spend eternity, feasting, singing, and arm wrestling.
You can enter the Hall of Heroes after collecting a special chalice in every stage. The chalice can only be collected by killing enough enemies with souls. Some enemies don't have souls, and so they don't count. There are some exceptions to this rule, but most notably in the Ant Caves. I struggled with that thing for about 2 hours. I need a map for that place. The Hall of Heroes itself has 2 floors. Start on the bottom floor and are unable to move up to the top floor until you collect enough chalices. You can't enter the upper floors as the stairs are ghostly stairs, and trust me, I tried to get up there even without power-ups and with. And you can't. Every time you get a chalice, you're sent here. You don't just get life upgrades. In fact, there's a pattern, at least at first. The first time you talk to a hero, or at least their statue form, you get a weapon. Then on the next chalice, you get a life boost in the form of a life bottle. And finally, you can talk to them the third time to find yourself with some gold. There's also a merchant gargoyle and a gargoyle at the front that sometimes will talk to you. The one thing that this place is missing is a life pool. Life pools are what help you restore your health once they've run low, because life bottles can be refilled. Same thing with energy vials. I wish there was a way that you could get those more easily. The final staple that many levels use is runes. These runes act as colored keys that prevent you from getting into areas early. They're not often hard to find, but they're hard enough that you can't just blast through everything. If you're going for a chalice in every level, the levels will take you about an average of 10 to 15 minutes on your first run. It's a perfect length in my opinion. It's long enough that you can fully experience the level, but also means the devs can flash out the individual levels' themes, layouts, and mechanics. Like here in the 5th level. If you spend even a little time in the corn, you'll instantly lose a life bottle's worth of energy. However, if you kill enough enemies, and get to the end, grab a clog, and clear out a Scarecrow, if you haven't already, you can fix the machine, which will cut some of the corn, which will lead you to not only the chalice, but some gold and one of those life pools that I mentioned earlier. The progression both inside levels and from level to level is perfect. You feel like you're getting more powerful, and it isn't just a well-crafted illusion. You are getting more powerful. It feels great. Despite the amazing progression and weapons, this game is hard. The footage that's here is my first playthrough for a change, as usually by the time I am getting around to making a review, I usually either have to play the game again a second time, or I have to, well, just play some things that are available in the post-game. I did this because I knew this game was going to be harder than most. I didn't want to spoil that for myself. Remember that 5th level that I talked about? Well, I had several game overs on that level alone. It was so bad I had to grind out the first stage so I could refill my health. This game was a nice breath of fresh air for me because at the same time, I was replaying Pokemon Y, the easiest Pokemon game out there. Like, Pokemon is the easiest of the easy, but this was the easiest of the easy of the easy. It was nice to play a game that I actually struggled with. I do have a few nitpicks about this gameplay though. Because your attack buttons don't combine to form combos, you'll find that you can do little more than just mash the square button or charge the circle button. This is why it's my favorite linear hack and slash. Spoiler alert for that top 10 list I mentioned, but Hyrule Warriors is my favorite hack and slash. I like that I can press the X and Y buttons in different combinations to form chains of moves. That, and I would much prefer dodging mechanic in Hyrule Warriors over the shield mechanic in Medievil. This segment will be the shortest segment. Honestly, most of the story is backstory, so I don't count it as spoilers. The main events are told through gameplay and dialogue. 100 years ago, Sir Daniel Fortescue was hailed as a hero for leading the charge against the evil rogue sorcerer Zarok and his army of the undead. What actually happened is that Sir Dan fell at the first charge because he was shot in the eye. The heroes in the Hall of Heroes know this and most taunt you for it. Part of the reason why he was so bad was the fact that he was only an honorary knight, And he only got to that position because he was a very good storyteller. In the end, Zarek was defeated, but he's back, and he's once again risen the dead and taken the souls of Gallowmere hostage. Now that I've talked generally about the game, I figure my best way to describe why I love this game is to talk about each level in order, individually. There'll be major spoilers for items, enemies, bosses, patterns, actual bosses, like what their patterns are, characters, and secrets. So please, if you care about that sort of thing, or you're even remotely considering buying this game, skip to the conclusion of this video. The timestamp will either be directly on screen, or if I forget to put it in the actual video. I'll give you a second to skip there. Alright, now to those of you who don't care or have played this remake or the original before, let's begin with the technical first level of the game, Dan's Crypt. This is the easiest tutorial I've ever seen. I've had more trouble with Pokemon Y's tutorial, which could be considered the whole game, but let's not worry about that. This introduces you to the controls and weapons in a safe environment before showing you what a life bottle is and what a rune is. Then the level ends. I mean, it's a decent tutorial, but I feel like the first real level is a better tutorial. So after you leave Dan's Crypt, you get access to the overworld map, mostly fogged over. Here you move to the first level, the Graveyard. The Graveyard is a simple tutorial level with the final basic mechanics being introduced. Chalices in the Hall of Heroes, as well as merchant gargoyles. In every level, there's a collectathon aspect in the chalices. I explained this earlier. This is the first level with a chalice. The merchant gargoyles appear towards the end. While I briefly talked about them in the beginning, they're invaluable later on, especially with the gold shield and the myriad of ranged weapons and percent-based weapons. I said that those are the last of the basic mechanics, but the real final mechanic that isn't upgrade, enemy, or weapon-based is the water mechanics. If you enter deep water, you'll instantly die. You'll lose a life bottle's worth of life. The next level is Cemetery Hill. This is where you find the very important item, but first you need to find a club. No, not like a nightclub, but like an actual club, like bashing. Luckily there's one in a chest. The club is your first introduction to bashing weapons. It can put out fire, break big stuff, light torches, and do a lot of damage. You have to do all three to access the chalice, life bottles, gold, and a witch talisman, which you'll need later for optional weapons. You want them, by the way, trust me. Either way, you can use the club and your shield to either boost through or break boulders that the statue's Zarek activated sent your way. If you're gamer enough, you can jump over the boulders, but your timing has to be perfect, and I found that it's kind of inconsistent, at least for me. Maybe I'm just not gamer enough. The next level happens to be the final level of the short-lived demo, which is what I played. The Hilltop Mausoleum is your first introduction to the imps. These imps will steal your stuff and pawn them off to the merchant gargoyles, making you buy them back for a ton of money. It never happened to me, and since I was always short on coins, or gold, or whatever you want to call them, even at the end after beating the final boss, I decided I shouldn't get footage for it. Either way, this level collapses as you progress. It's also your introduction to quest items. In one of the wings, you can find a sheet music for a ghost pianist who needs it. This allows you to open up the chalice. This is also your first mandatory boss, as well. The glass demon isn't hard if you've collected even one chalice, as the crossbow makes quick work of him. Even if you didn't know, it's still possible due to your throwing knives. After beating him, you need to grab the skull key that drops, and then you can move on. From here, you go to a level called Return of the Graveyard. Here you go backwards to the graveyard level until you reach some gates. You pass through these on your first run, but now you can actually open them, and there's a new area behind them. At the end of your run, though, your second mandatory boss, that's more akin to a mini-boss, appears. Beating them gives you access to a dash move, something that I used a ton in this playthrough, both for its shield bash and speed increase to get away from sticky situations. The dog boss isn't that hard either, but if you're low on health it can be. All you gotta do is wait for it to lunge, and then dodge and then get any hits on it you can. Not too bad. What is too bad, though, is the next level, Scarecrow Fields. The titular scarecrows are required to get the chalice. If you kill only the farmers that spawn from the hay, then you won't have enough percentage. I had to try this level over and over and over. When I finally got it, I accidentally exited when trying to talk to the gargoyle. So I do it all again. Either way, that isn't even the hard part. The scarecrows are. These scarecrows take a ton of hits, and the only reliable way to kill them was the hammer. I just had gotten it from the chalice, and even then, I still had to know where they were and charge accordingly. It was hell. Although I do think that this is my favorite level. Well, yes, you can go to the ant caves first, like I did. They're in the Enchanted Forest, and you cannot complete the Enchanted Forest yet. I'll talk about the ant caves, and I'll talk about the Enchanted Forest. For now, we do need to talk about the Pumpkin Fields. This doesn't have anything crazy in it, but it is a fun level, and the visuals and settings are very nice. Not really much to say. The next level is dedicated to a boss, the Pumpkin Serpent. I think the Pumpkin Serpent is truly the second boss, as the wolves are more like mini-bosses in my opinion. You can use the Witch Talisman to get a Dragon Gem, which you'll need for one of the best weapons in the game. All she wants you to do is beat the boss, which you were going to do anyway. Smash pods, kill pumpkins, and eventually the serpent awakens. All you gotta do is hit the vines, and then wail on the pumpkin. I didn't fail this one thanks to my enchanted sword I had just gotten. The chalice eluded me for a bit, but only because I had forgot I had collected it. The next level, gatekeeping the Enchanted Forest, is the Sleeping Village. Here you cannot kill any humans, or you can say goodbye to the chalice. Instead, for a while you have to go from building to building, fighting items, and completing tasks to open up the town more. After a while, some guards with guns will appear, and those will contribute to the chalice. The thing you need, though, is the Shadow Artifact. After completing this level, you can just go back to the Enchanted Forest and move on, but I didn't. I wanted every chalice. This level was really fun, although I have a single nitpick. For starters, I didn't like the camera in several spots. I had a ton of trouble with it. This room is especially egregious. Yeah, I know, I mentioned earlier that sometimes the bad camera can be good for claustrophobia, but this doesn't make me feel claustrophobic. This just makes me feel not good. The next level is the Asylum Grounds. Here you solve quote-unquote riddles that aren't actually riddles from this frankly amazing-looking stop-motion head. Like I said, the riddles aren't really riddles, and it's just doing tasks in areas as they open up. I won't spoil what the riddles are, because I actually had a lot of fun with this level and just seeing what the answer was and what he'd say next. The only one that I struggled was the final one. I was confused why the rat wouldn't follow me. If you've played the game before, then you know what I'm talking about. I do have a way that they could make this more of a riddle, though. If all the areas of the maze were open, except for the final one, then you could figure out where you needed to go. I wish that they had actually done this, but it's whatever. It's still a fun level. The next level, before you have to backtrack to the Enchanted Forest, is the Asylum. This is a gauntlet that throws a ton of enemies at you. I actually remember thinking to myself that it was kind of like Dynasty Warriors, if the general enemies weren't pushovers. This didn't cause me to game over anything, but I did use every life bottle I had. There are zombies, asylum patients that have gone insane, and cannons that fire at you from above and in the background. At the end you can get a Dragon Gem, rescue the mayor of the village you just ran through, and backtrack to the Enchanted Forest. Here you can use a witch artifact to go to the ant caves, the Enchanted Forest I mean, and I'm kind of glad I did. It was a lot more challenging than it would be if I came back with all the chalice weapons I had at the time. This level was very esoteric, and you don't need to kill enemies to get the chalice, but instead you need to rescue disgusting looking cockney fairies. You've also been tasked by the witch that shrunk you to get some amber. If you do both, you're rewarded with both the chalice and a chicken wing weapon that turns your enemies into cooked chicken to restore your health instantly. While I didn't use it, it seems like it'd be fun to use. However, if it runs out of ammo, you have to go get the amber again. Boss here is optional, and it's the disgusting Ant Queen. You gotta spam projectiles while she's vulnerable, dodge her own projectiles, and defeat her worker ants. The Enchanted Forest itself is a little bit different. A lot of the areas are gated off initially. There are these spinning plants and frogs. To open up the area past the initial one, you must go up a lift to a big bird's nest and break all 3 eggs by pushing them out of the nest. A good shield is invaluable here, as the bird swoops down and attacks. Next, you open up the Shadow Demon's lair after doing some platforming, and you awaken them with the Shadow Artifact, and then do a bit of puzzle solving. Finally, you steal their artifact. This opens up the chalice in the same room, and any other gated off areas. After killing many demons, you can collect the chalice, as the frogs and plants don't contribute to it. Either way, use the Shadow Demon artifact you just got to go into their territory and fight a boss. The 2 regular demons that fly around you and turn the floor. I had to go back and grind some health in the first level, as I was low on health bottles when I got there. Since they turned the floor, I needed as many as possible, as they knocked an entire one out of me every time I fell. Just spam projectiles, preferably the crossbow or any of the longbows, and don't fall. That's it. Afterwards, you head to the Pools of the Ancient Dead, probably one of the best names I've heard in this entire game, where you're basically tasked by the Boatman from Undertale to collect souls in the form of golden helmets. Didn't know this at first. In fact, I had to collect one to know. because I didn't notice him until I was done. The challenge here is in the bog. It's an instant life bottle. There are big undead soldiers who will bump you into the bog, and octopus will do the same towards the end. And there's a chase scene with a big combat encounter afterwards. Then that's it. I'd like to give note that I like the idea of the collectibles removing the bridges here, making it harder to progress. Up next is the lake. Here you can roam a sunken town and its docks. However, you have to stealth your way through, as there are watchers that will alert much stronger enemies. You weave in and out of the town, through buildings in the docks, and get the chalice. You actually have to freeze a whirlpool using the runes you collected, which I thought was so cool. Pun. This level then leads you underground to the crystal caves, the next level. Here you can find the creatures that sunk the town, as well as imps preserved in crystal. The main attraction here, though, is the optional dragon boss. After putting the 2 dragon gems that you may or may not have collected in the eyes of the plaque, he awakens. Use the club to break the crystals above his head until his health drained. Afterwards, he gives you the dragon armor, and it uses a weapon spot, but it allows you to spit fire. Mixed with the strafe command, it's completely overpowered.
Here, take this dragon potion and leave me alone. Drink it when you need it. It gives you armor that is impervious to heat. Plus, it lets you breathe fire. Now go away.
Up next is the Gallows Gauntlet. I actually forgot to put this stage in the script, so I'm just going to have to go off the cuff here. So the Gallows Gauntlet is basically exactly what it sounds like. It's basically a canyon where you go through. And if you want to get the chalice, you're going to have to go up through an area that requires the dragon armor. And a good thing I got it. This was really challenging for me. I did have to go back and grind twice for health, because there are a ton of enemies and a lot of big ones that can do a lot of damage, especially this horrifying mummy one. But other than that, there really isn't a whole lot to write home about, aside from this like little snake dragon enemy thing that looks like the secret from the 5th level. Alright, the ghost ship is next. The level's chalice is a bit weird. In order to get any percentage, you have to kill the captains of each crew. You can't actually just kill the enemies. Other than that, it's standard about until the end. You fight the head honcho. You light the cannon with a club's fire that you get from the torch, and it will fire the cannon, while enemies are wailing on you. The buttons beside the cannon controls where it goes, but after a while, the captain remembers that it plays Generation 5 competitively and uses Raid Dance to boost his water-type attacks. Now your fire-type attacks are nerfed, meaning that you can't use the cannon anymore. The captain starts using Rock Throw despite setting up the rain, and all you can do is dodge. However, when he uses Magnet Bomb, you can use that explosion to light the cannon and hit him. Honestly, it's a really creative fight. I liked it a lot. Now for the final 3 levels. We start off at Xerox, Time, and Train Station. The dialogue here is top-notch, all about, like, black magic of science. Like, it's hilarious.
Using a dark magic called science, Xerox has constructed a device based around the mechanical measurement of time. The innards of this chronograph are fiendishly complicated. Keep your eye on the flying timepieces and get ready to reset the hands of the master time clock.
First, you have to go through a clock-based puzzle. Then you deactivate electricity to get a rune to open up the train station. You also get a life bottle if you're attentive enough. Next, you go to the 3 nearby way stations to open up the way to Xerox's base of operations. The second to last level is where you go through the area where we saw Xerox in the prologue. This also activates the Lost Soul mechanic, which is really dumb. It does unlock the original Medievil within the remake, though. I just didn't bother for this review, maybe later. You fight your way to Xerox's lair, which is the area for the final battle and the level. The level is a 3-pronged boss fight. First, use your own health to supply your skeleton army with health to fight Xerox's skeleton army. Any extra soldiers still alive turn into energy vials for you to refill your health. Next, you fight Xerox's best soldier. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, to be honest. He's a fire horseman. Easy enough with the magic sword, actually. You wait for his horse to rear, and then you wail on him. Finally, Xerox anamorphs into this thing, and it's a pretty similar fight. Wait for his magic barrier to fall, and then wail on him with projectiles and melee. And that's the game.
Curse you, Sir Knight. I am finally defeated. Yet if I am to fail, then all shall perish. You are doomed, Fortescue. You will never leave this domain.
Now, why did I do this? Why did I sit down and write so much more than I had to? Because I already had a review pretty much done. Well, I wanted to describe each level in detail to show why I like this game so much. The atmosphere, set pieces, and overall design is extremely fun to run through. These levels aren't overly long, and that means that they're fun to replay. The chalices and runes is a nice aspect of exploration, and the levels themselves complement the gameplay style and exploration very well. I don't really know how I can describe it, but I just know that there was never a time where I was mad at the design or displeased with something for whatever reason, aside from the 2 nitpicks I had. It's not perfect, no, but I honestly never had issues with obtuse or weird design. In fact, a lot of the design points stuck out to me a lot. I think that this game is incredible, and it actually has Starlink's old spot on the old top 10 list that I mentioned earlier. If you care about numbers, it's 9.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed this game, and I highly recommend it to anybody with a PS4. This one was kind of hard to write, especially since I gave a full paragraph to each level. That was by far the hardest part. If you follow me on Twitter, you should by the way, you know that my next review will be a dual review of AM2R and Samus Returns. However, that won't be for a while due to the myriad of technical issues that I had with this video's production. But I'm sure you guys will still like it nonetheless, because there's going to be a nice little twist like this video had. But that's all I got. And I guess I'll see you guys next time.
Game over. Continue